When I say, who's the master? You say, no.
What's going on, guys? Showing off the King here, and I am here to bring you guys a special review. Like I said, this is me. I'm back to my channel, and I'm doing things a little bit differently. Last video I did was talking about Game of Thrones. I am going to start getting into gaming more, but I was able to check out Amazing Spider-Man 2 over the weekend, and with all the controversy between the critic scores and the viewer scores and just, critics in general, I decided to just put my 2 cents in it. I'm going to let you guys know how I feel about, movie critics in general. If you could tell by the title of this video, I'm starting to hate movie critics. Now, I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible. I'm not going to try to jump all over the place, but it might get a little bit ranty. So just to let you guys know, I might get a little angry during the video. So if I start trailing off a little bit on a tangent, just stick with it. I'll bring it back into to a point where it'll all make sense in the end. So again, like I said, this is mostly going to be my personal review for Amazing Spider-Man 2. And before I get started, I kind of want to just talk in a little bit general terms about how I review movies and how critics review movies in general. Now, I also want to say that I'm not a movie critic. Okay, some of the things that I will say in this video may contradict some of those aspects, but I'm not a movie critic. I am a person who loves movies, who just likes to share my opinion. I'll just leave it at that. So, Amazing Spider-Man 2. But you know what? Before I get to that, when I look at a movie, I have the unique ability. Maybe it's not unique to me, but I kind of like to see a movie going into it based off of what it is. So, for instance, if I go see an action movie like Expendables, I know what I'm going to expect from a movie like Expendables. I'm going to expect to see a bunch of people from my childhood who I like to see kick ass. Dolph Lundgren, Sylvester Stallone, Jean-Claude Van Damme, etc. I expect them to kill a lot of people, be ultra violent, and be hilarious. That's pretty much it. I'm not going to go into that movie looking for an amazing story and complex characters and, drama, love story, all that other shit. But I feel like I'm able to make that leap, whereas some other reviewers are not able to make that leap. And that's kind of where my anger and my frustration comes from, because they will go into that same movie and will say the movie was shit, the story didn't make any sense, and the action was ridiculous. And I'm just like, what did you think you were going to go see? If you were to go a movie called The Expendables, you would expect, and again, these are all 80s and 90s action stars. What did you really expect to see? So now you kind of understand where my frustration will come in with certain movie critics. And again, I'm not saying all movie critics. That again, I'm not going to name drop. Not that anyone of any relevance will ever see this video anyway. But I just kind of want to explain myself before I go into any further details on why I review the way that I review and why do I score the way that I score. I use a 10-point scale, so 9 out of 10, 9.8 out of 10, etc. Now, Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a movie that was very decisive between critics and fans alike. I believe right now it is sitting at a 56%, no, I'm sorry, less than that, a 54% rotten on RottenTomatoes.com, which to me is just ridiculous. Like, I'm reading through some of these comments, I'm reading through some of these reviews from, other movie critic sites, and again, they basically nitpick this movie to death, and it just frustrates me so much. Like, I'm the kind of person, again, let's talk about Amazing Spider-Man. What did I go into? What were my expectations, and what did I get out of that movie? Number one, I wanted to see, did they get Spider-Man correct? Did they follow his origins correctly? Did they get his powers correct? Is Spider-Man Spider-Man? Number two, in this kind of superhero movie, you need a great story. So, did I enjoy the story? Was the story fun? Did I really feel like I was a part of that movie? Overall, and the most important thing, how was the action? I mean, because let's be honest, this is a superhero film. We want to see action. We want to see Spider-Man do what Spider-Man does. And did they get the villains right? That's probably the last thing. So I'm gonna talk about my thoughts on the film. Then I'll kind of touch on what the critics were saying about the film, and then I'll kind of go into a mix of both as to kind of explain overall where my issues lie. Now, number one, the story. And again, spoiler alert: if you haven't seen Amazing Spider-Man 2 by now, you probably don't want to, look at this video because this video will contain a bunch of spoilers. Now, Spider-Man again. This is they're graduated from high school. I believe it's high school. No, I think it was high school. I'm almost positive it was high school. So, Gwen and Peter have graduated from high school. Spider-Man is, Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He's enjoying it. He's like swinging through the city, and that's actually one thing that I love. The swing mechanics in this movie were so well done. The CGI, everything they did was perfect, spot on. No complaints there. And even at the beginning, them going back from the first movie and explaining what happened to his parents, brilliant. Now that's one thing where I'll pause and I'll say that the critics were bashing, and this is the thing that frustrates me. So in the first Amazing Spider-Man movie, one of the biggest gripes that critics had was, number one, they felt like they gave this great story about Peter Parker and his parents, and they went nowhere with it. It's kind of like they introduced his parents, the parents dropped him off at his grandparents' house, and then they just disappeared, and he didn't care, he didn't ask about him much. It was just pretty much he just went on about his business. That was one of the major gripes that people had with the first movie. So you know what? Mark Webb went back and was like, you know what? Okay, second movie around, we're going to make sure we explain everything with his parents so that we can kind of close that door or to kind of, move that part of the story along. So they give it to us at the beginning of the movie. We actually get a little bit of the flashback of what happened again from the first movie, how they dropped him off, and they expanded on that to show exactly what happened with his parents. And you know what the critics did? They shat on it. They basically were just saying, oh, we didn't need all that stuff at the beginning of the movie with his parents. It was just exposition. The movie could have been moving along a lot faster. And I'm just sitting here like face palming myself, thinking, I'm like, you guys are not fucking happy about anything. It's like you complain about it the first time, and then when he gives you exactly what you asked for, you still fucking complain. I'm like, me personally, I thought them adding in that part about his family grounded the story and made it make sense. It wasn't that his parents just left him. There was more to it. Oscorp was a sinister company from the beginning, and we kind of got that from them showing how they ultimately died. And we also closed that book to see if, if Peter's parents are really alive or if they're hiding out somewhere. No, Peter's parents are dead. No way they survived that plane crash. End of story. Now, the other part of the story I really kind of wanted to touch on is just the overall Spider-Man action. Now, when I think of Spider-Man, I think of certain things. Spider-Man is an acrobatic fighter, uses his webs a lot, and he's a shit talker. And I felt like Andrew Garfield absolutely nailed it on that aspect. The beginning part where he was chasing down Rhino through the city, I went to go see the movie with my wife, and we were both in tears, just laughing hysterically. How he would jump on the top of the car, and you could see his feet dangling from the side of the car, and he would just bend down and was like knocking on the window. And just literally that's what Spider-Man to me is. And that's exactly something that Tobey Maguire in the original Sam Raimi trilogy didn't do. I felt like he wasn't able to capture that essence of Spider-Man where he was a shit talker. He was also just, frustrating his opponents because that's what Spider-Man does. And again, I definitely think that they handled that perfectly in this movie, as well as they handled the relationship between him and Gwen Stacy. Now, again, I know a lot of people say that, their chemistry is so good because they're actually dating. Yeah, but their chemistry was great in the first movie too, and they weren't dating at the beginning of that as well. So, that kind of point is new. Now, another thing I want to talk about is the villains. Okay. So the villains were plentiful. But guess what? I was okay with that. I felt like the way they handled it in this movie was perfect. You got a little bit of Paul Giamatti at the beginning, and then you got a little bit of him at the end. Now, granted, he was not the most efficient bad guy in the movie, but let's be honest, he wasn't that efficient of a bad guy in the TV show either. He's a putz, he's an idiot, he's just all brute and no brain. So, that to me is exactly like, you can't get mad at, Mark Webb for treating Rhino like the true villain that he is. He's not that bright. He's more destructive than anything else. So, of course, they're not going to make him super intelligent or do anything crazy with him, because that's exactly what it is. And if they did change him around, you guys will be complaining that, oh my God, you guys didn't stick to the script of Rhino. Rhino was supposed to be this, blah, 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 blah. It's like you can't win for losing. It is what it is. So Electro was the main villain, played by Jamie Foxx. I thought Jamie Foxx's portrayal of Electro was, I don't want to say perfect. I'll say it was damn good. I felt like he captured the essence of Electro. And again, let's be honest, Electro's original look and story from the comic books and the TV show wasn't that great either. They took a character and to me that wasn't that important, and they made me actually enjoy it. Now, yes, we can honestly say that his character was a little hammy, but was it enough to drag the score down to 54%? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I thought that him, transitioning into a bad guy was very villainish. It was, again, one of the other big gripes that critics had was that they've seen the Electro villain before. They almost compared it to the Riddler from Batman Forever, one of the earlier Batmans. They kind of compared it to him, and to that I say, so what? I could sit there and pick apart Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which was a movie that I absolutely loved. I actually liked it equal to or better than the Avengers. I could sit there and take the Winter Soldier's origin story and equate that to damn near any other villain that's out there. A guy that used to be friends with a guy that's a hero that ended up getting hurt and coming back as a villain. Again, all these tropes have been used before, so for you guys to try to single it out and make it be that, Amazing Spider-Man is recycling villain origin stories is complete bullshit. Because again, I can pick out any kind of superhero movie, and do the exact same thing. So let's not go there. Now, sorry, I'm getting my thoughts together. So now, one of the other things about the movie was the size of the number of villains. So we had the Rhino, we had Green Goblin, and we had Electro. And if those who were smart enough to realize, we also had Alistair Smythe, who I technically wouldn't classify him as a villain. It was probably just him being a pre-villain. And for those who don't know, Alistair Smythe was a villain in the comic books and in the TV show, who created the Spider Slayers. It's a robot group of monsters that resemble spiders that track down and hunt down Spider-Man. And Alistair Smythe is the one that created them. Now, again, one of the issues that people had with the movie was that they compared it to saying there were too many villains in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, the only thing I will say to that is, if you have a problem with Amazing Spider-Man 2 having too many villains, how the hell are you going to be able to watch the movie Sinister Six? Because guess what? In this movie, it was only 3, and in Sinister Six, it's going to be 6. So I don't understand how people are complaining about Amazing Spider-Man 2 having 3 villains when the Sinister Six movie is going to have 6. So if the same people that are complaining about this having 3, you better not even think about going to see the other movie, because it's just going to blow your mind. You're just going to, your brain's going to explode from like nerd rage. And again, I didn't have a problem with the 3 villains. I think the way they spaced them out, I think how they used Rhino in a limited capacity, how they transformed Harry Osborn into the Green Goblin, and how, they did the Electro thing was perfect. I think Electro had a lot of great screen time. That first battle he had with him in Times Square was awesome. And I don't really have that many gripes about Amazing Spider-Man 2. Now, if I had to score this movie out of a 10, I would probably give it a 7.9, if not an 8. Now, I would give, just for comparison, I would give Captain America and the Winter Soldier a 8.9 to a 9 point. As a matter of fact, I think I gave Captain America: The Winter Soldier a 9.5. Again, I thought that that was probably as close to perfect that you can get for a Marvel film, other than Avengers. You know, for as far as single uh, Marvel films, superhero movies, that one towers above everyone else. But again, this is not about Captain America. This is about Spider-Man. Now, I want to kind of just, back up my claims with a little bit of numbers. And this is where my rant kind of takes off. Number one. So now I want to talk a little bit about facts, numbers. I kind of want to talk about, critic scores and, things of that nature. So Amazing Spider-Man right now, like I said at the beginning of the video, is tracking at 54% rotten. And I kind of want to compare this movie to another decisive movie from 2013, which was Man of Steel, which is currently operating at about a 50%, 56% rotten. Now, me personally, I don't typically take critic reviews into heart as to what I go see, because a lot of times I feel like most movie critics nowadays, they're all just whiny and entitled, and they feel like they're just to me, they're just a bunch of movie snobs, where they've watched so many movies now, they're almost just jaded. And if anything doesn't meet their precise standards, they shit all over it. That's just my opinion. And and when situations like this happen, this proves my point even more. And again, this just goes beyond simple opinion. When you again, some people say that you can't argue someone else's opinion, and to an extent, I agree with that. But when you have such a disparaging amount between what a critic thinks about a movie versus what a collective fan group says about a movie, and again, I'm not talking about just going to see a Spider-Man or Superman fanboy and ask them how much they love it, because for the most of the time they're going to say, "Oh, I love it," even if the movie sucked. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about more so where Rotten Tomatoes has a difference in between the audience score and the critic score. And I think with Man of Steel, they're at 56%, and the audience score is about 76%. Now, this was a movie that was very decisive between, fans and critics alike. And me personally, I thought Man of Steel was hands down the best superhero movie of 2013, hands down. It crushes Iron Man 3. It crushes Thor: Dark World. I mean, Man of Steel was, to me, the quintessential superhero movie up until Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And the biggest issue that I had with the way the critics scored that movie is because of a movie that happened before Man of Steel. Now, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a movie that came out before this one, which was a reintroduction into Superman, and it was Superman Returns. Superman Returns was by far one of the worst, absolute worst superhero movies of all time. And if you ask most audiences, they would probably agree. Like, that was the first time I've ever in history went to a superhero film and damn near fell asleep. That movie was so boring, it literally almost put me to sleep, which never happens. And you had the most interesting character that you could put on a movie screen, with his powers being so diverse, and you managed to and it wasn't just me. There were other people in that theater who were falling asleep. But critics love that fucking movie. As a matter of fact, let me just look this up real quick, because I got my numbers right here, and I just want to make sure that I'm not going crazy. I just want to make sure I'm not going crazy. Because if I remember correctly, Superman Returns scored higher than Man of Steel. I think, as a matter of fact, Superman Returns was certified fresh. I might be wrong, but I definitely want to check, because this is where and this is again where probably me doing a little bit of pre-work would have. Yes, okay. So let me get this straight. So you're gonna tell me that Man of Steel was 56% rotten, but Superman Returns was 76% fresh? What? boggles the mind. You find me one regular normal person who really believes that Man of Steel was an inferior movie to Superman Returns. Find just one. And this just goes to show you that most movie critics don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They just don't. When I saw that, I was just done. I was just absolutely done. And and get this. So Superman Returns, the critics rated it certified fresh at 76%, but the audience score, about 60% of the audiences enjoyed Superman Returns. So again, it's exact parallel to what Man of Steel was. Because again, Superman Returns was one of the most boringest film that I've ever seen in my life, and then Man of Steel probably was the most action-packed movie that I've seen from a superhero in my entire life. So, and of course, if you go back to what the critics were saying about Man of Steel, they were just complaining that the movie was too long, that the action scenes just went on too long. We didn't have any Clark Kent moments. They were tired of the same origin stories, just complaining about bullshit. The first opening 20 minutes on Krypton from Man of Steel was better than anything that happened in Superman Returns. Anything. You want to know what happened in Superman Returns? I can tell you in a couple of seconds what happened in Superman Returns. It's Superman versus a plane. Superman lifts up a car. Superman gets shot in the eye and it bounces off. And the last thing is Superman picks up a goddamn kryptonite island. That's it. Oh, I'm sorry. And Superman has a son. That's it. Bullshit. To me, when you have a character like Superman, which is supposed to be the strongest superhero in the DC universe, you want to see Superman punch the shit out of somebody, and you want to see him use his abilities to their full extent against someone that can take it. And that's exactly what Man of Steel gave us. And I'm not the kind of person who's just some sort of just action junkie and I don't care about story. Man of Steel had an excellent story. They didn't bog down the story with just like a 40-minute origin story. They kind of mixed it up in what's currently going on. And they talked about him as a young person and, how his dad died. It was a great movie. Superman Returns? Not so much. But again, I don't want to go off on a diatribe about Superman Returns and Man of Steel anymore. I kind of want to bring it back in. I told you guys I would probably end up doing this. I kind of want to bring this back into my original point about talking about the Amazing Spider-Man. If you look at what Amazing Spider-Man did over the weekend, it brought in $92 million. $92 million for the Amazing Spider-Man 2 is fantastic. But what do all the critics and all the people online do? They don't, and this is how I know that this is full of bullshit. So when they talk about how the Amazing Spider-Man did, they say there's good news and there's bad news. They said the good news is that it made $92 million, but the bad news is that it didn't make anywhere near as much money as the original trilogy did. Now I'm gonna let you guys marinate on that for a second. Okay, what the hell does Amazing Spider-Man have to do with the original trilogy? The original trilogy is done. That was a different time in movies. There were not the same caliber of movies out. You can't compare, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 to the original Sam Raimi trilogy. You can't do that. But what you can do is you can compare it to the last movie that just came out 2 years ago, Amazing Spider-Man 1. And I have the information here. The Amazing Spider-Man 1, the opening weekend, it made $62 million. Let me just double check. Yes, the opening weekend, it made $62 million. This one made $92 million. This movie made $30 million more than the last one did. $30 million more. Not $3 million, $30 million more. This movie had a $30 million higher opening than the original one. To me, that's a giant success. But they don't talk about that. They don't talk about how Amazing Spider-Man 2 had a greater opening than Amazing Spider-Man 1. And all they want to do is compare it to the original trilogy, which was done at a completely different time frame, which has nothing to do with this movie. So to me, it's just those little nuances because, again, these movie critics look real stupid when they shit on the movie so bad, but it still makes a lot of money. It was only $4 million off from the Captain America and Winter Soldier movie, which was a superior movie, which was a higher rated movie, and the difference between the money was only about $4 million. So to me, that was just a win in and of itself. So again, I just little things like that that just kind of just make me laugh. I'm just like this is just funny to me. Now again, in the end, I really just want people to kind of go out and discover for themselves how these movies are. And I don't want them to listen to movie critics as much because I feel like these guys don't have the heart to do what they're doing anymore. I feel like I feel like most of these guys are all jaded. And again, I don't want to say all movie critics because there are a lot of legit movie critics that I personally go to myself just to kind of gauge how movies are. Ultimately, I make the decision for myself, but there are a couple of movie critics out there who I think have a better grasp on reality as far as like movies of today. The guys over at Screen Rant, the guys from AMC Movie Talk, just to name a few. I really kind of trust their opinions on most things. Again, we don't always agree. Because if I remember correctly, John Schnepp from AMC Movie Talk, I don't believe he enjoyed the Amazing Spider-Man 2 himself. So, or if he did enjoy it, it wasn't as much as he enjoyed Man of Steel, but which is fine. So I'm not saying that I only mention people who have the same exact view that I do, because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to mention that these are some people who I feel have a very level head when it comes to movies, especially when it comes to comic book movies. Because again, I'm not going to go see Siskel and Ebert, to go see about a superhero film, because they don't give a fuck about superhero films. They're more of the artsy fartsy movies, and stuff like that. They're not going to be able to come in with a clear perspective on a superhero movie because they're just too old. I'm the kind of person where I feel like once you hit a certain age, you shouldn't be able to do movie reviews anymore, because I feel you almost get like a cranky old man. But again, that's just my opinion. But again, I want to know what you guys think about the movie. What did you think? Did you think the critics got it completely wrong on Amazing Spider-Man 2? Let me know in the comment section below. Definitely, if you enjoyed this video, thumbs it up for me. It definitely helps me get out there in the community, get my videos out there more, and I would definitely like to do that. And definitely subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be bringing out a lot of content, and I really do appreciate you guys doing that. Show the King. Have a nice day.